Good morning and welcome to the webinar on standardization in Horizon 2020 organized by CEN and CENELEC, by the CENELEC Management Center here in Brussels. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see the slides, but we will test this throughout the beginning of the webinar as well to make sure that everyone is in tune with what we are presenting to you. So you get a visual image of who we are. We are your presenters today. My name is Andrea Gulacci. I'm the unit manager of the Research Integration Unit in the CENELEC Management Center, and I'm here with my colleague,
Luc van den Berge, program manager in the unit.
Our main expertise within the CENELEC Management Center is really to bridge the gap between research and standardization. It's the scope and aim of the Research Integration Unit to bridge the gap to researchers, to innovators, to facilitate as well the integration of standardization in Horizon 2020, which will be also the bulk of the webinar today. The agenda of the webinar, you have received that with the email and the confirmation of the webinar. We will be talking about innovation and the general policy context, what role there is for standardization. I will be presenting that to you. I will also introduce you to CEN and CENELEC, the European Standards Organizations, who we are and what we do. Then my colleague Luc will go deeper into the Horizon 2020 project's proposals approach and how to address standardization, based as well on practical examples on how standardization has been addressed in research projects successfully. And I will conclude with the support we have for project proposers and a bit the summary and the conclusions of the webinar today. Please, because we are a lot of people online, we have had over 600 registrations for this webinar. We have muted everyone. However, the question box, which you see on your webinar tool, is open. So please do ask your questions. We can see them on the screen here in our offices. We will not respond to them live. However, we will make a summary and a follow-up to all your questions after the webinar. I should also mention that the webinar today is live. However, we are recording it, and on the 24th of November, next Tuesday, at 10 a.m., we will make the recording available for a second round of viewing. So you will have the time to catch up at that stage as well. We also, if you do have any issues, technical, because you don't hear us, or visual, because you do not see the slides, please put those in the question box so we can sort that here internally with our IT team. We'll start with the first agenda point, innovation and what role for standardization. Primarily, and this is a policy context you are well familiar with, is of course the European Union policy context. We're talking about the Innovation Union, which was launched in 2010, where standardization has been given a primary role in support to innovation. We then have the standardization regulation, which was published in 2012, where again standards have been identified as an important tool to bridge the gap between research and marketable products or services on the internal European market. Horizon 2020, which I will also go a bit more into detail, also highlights standardization as one of the important processes and tools to contribute to European competitiveness. And the very recent single market communication, which was just published last month, highlights that standards are crucial for innovation and progress in the single market, increasing safety, interoperability and competition, and helping to remove trade barriers. This context is a very, very strong support and, if you want, push and encouragement to use standards as a tool for innovation and to use standards as a tool to market and scale up innovation. Particularly when we talk about Horizon 2020, which is the bulk of the presentation, we are looking at the uptake of research results. You are all familiar with a new approach in Horizon 2020, which is looking at how research should better be marketable, how innovation should be more taken up by the market. And in that sense, technical standards have been identified as one of the important tools to demonstrate this market applicability, market scale-up. In addition to that, to a bit position ourselves before I start going into the detail on who we are and what we do, on the participants portal, you will also find the European Committee for Standardization, CENELEC, identified as one of the organizations to provide support, particularly on the issues of standards. Now, in the broader context of the innovation life cycle, you see a bit the match and the overlap with the standardization life cycle. When we're talking about research questions at the very beginning of the idea, there is also, of course, a question of basic research, of terminology, of measurement, of testings, of doing things repeatable to demonstrate a certain homogeneous approach. Standards can help at that stage as well. When we're going further towards applied research, we're going into higher technology readiness levels. We are looking at design and interface, at measurement. We're looking at testing, compatibility, safety. Here standards start playing a very crucial role in making sure that your product, your services, your processes are interoperable, are compatible, are safe to be put on the market. When we're looking at the access to the market and maintenance of the quality of products and services, then standards become imperative, and it's something you will need to consider. Of course, Horizon 2020 is looking very much at this end of the cycle, at experimental development and access of market and maintenance, which is why standardization has also been identified as crucial for current research projects and is encouraged to be taken up in research project proposals. Now, considering these are a bit, if you want, introductory questions for you to bear in mind as a background for the next almost 2 hours that we will take you through this webinar, and to see where and how our solutions, our portfolio of documents, our different services can help you achieve this. Looking at, from your perspective, if your research and development results need to be compatible or interoperable with other technologies. Are you thinking about this kind of approach in your research project? Do you intend to bring your research results to the market? How will you ensure reliability and comparability of your R&D activities or results? Are you looking at a longer-term impact of your project and your project results, which is where we're talking about innovation scale-up? Do your results have a potential European or international market application? Would you like in the long term to display some kind of mark of product or process quality? Will any of the products or processes arising from your project be of interest for public procurement? And of course, will you need to reassure consumers and other stakeholders regarding the safety of your innovation? All these questions are for you to bear in mind, because all of them, in answering the slides that will come, will provide an answer on how standardization can help research and innovation projects. Moving on to who we are and what we do. From the registration list and participants list, we have noticed, and we welcome some of our colleagues from the national standardization organizations. However, I would say 95–98% of participants are new to CEN and CENELEC. So we hope that the next slides will answer a bit of questions on where we fit in, who we are, what we do, and of course, implicitly, why we are hosting this webinar. Who we are. At the European level, we're talking about 3 European standards organizations. We're talking about CEN, the European Committee for Standardization, CENELEC, the European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardization, and ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standards Institute. Collectively, we're known as the European Standards Organizations. We have 33 full members, which is 1 member per European country plus Turkey. You will see that on the next slide. And we also have a very well-established relationship with international standards bodies. I mentioned in the bottom left of my slide that we are officially recognized by the EU through this regulation 1025/2012. I'm stressing this because it is important to note that only CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI can develop formal European standards documents at the European level. So when we're talking from the point of view of the Commission of European Standards, we're looking at documents produced by these 3 organizations. Here in Brussels, we are working for the combined management center of CEN and CENELEC. ETSI is based in the south of France. We have a very seamless and coherent way of working together. However, I will focus today and look as well on what CEN and CENELEC can provide in terms of support and services to Horizon 2020. These are the members we have. There is one member per country. So at this stage, and with the slides that will be made available, you will see and identify the member, the national standardization organization in your country. So there is a counterpartner, there is a partner for dialogue on standardization issues for every European country and Turkey. We are part of a vast European standardization landscape. Of course, we have the regulators, the European Commission, the European Free Trade Association, the EU agencies. We also work with affiliate standards organizations, which are countries in the European neighborhood policies. We also work with associations that represent broad European interests. I mentioned as well the international environment. Our sisters organization at the international level, ISO, IEC, and ITU, and partner standardization bodies across different continents that have a specific interest in European standardization. Why we are stressing as well the international environment, because in Horizon 2020, a lot of projects also have to have an international impact, which is where the international standardization dimension and the channel of going through the European standardization organizations becomes very important. The international standardization landscape, CEN has a sister organization, ISO, and CENELEC has a sister organization, IEC. You will see on the arrows that connect us with the international level that over 30% of documents of standards produced by CEN are identical with the ones at the international level. For CENELEC, that is over 75% of standards. We operate under different agreements. CEN and ISO have the Vienna Agreement that have established this relationship. CENELEC and IEC have the Dresden Agreement. Both CEN and CENELEC work on the support and the basis of the national standardization organization, national standards bodies, national committees. These are the 33 members I showed you on the slide before. So it's a very coherent system that bases itself on national standards organizations that then provide their expertise, the stakeholder interest, the stakeholder support at the European level, and then further at the international level. Who participates in standardization is not the staff at the national standards organization, is however the national industry, national SMEs, federations, researchers, academia, innovators, anyone with a need on standardization issues. The Vienna and Dresden Agreement operate on basic principles. They are common to both agreements, hence why we merged them in one slide. Is the primacy of international standards, is the intention to avoid duplication of work at international and European levels, because as I mentioned, the expertise and the stakeholder base comes from the national level. Why make experts work on the same subject both at European and international level? The aim is to have identical worldwide and European standards, to have a coherent approach for industry, to have a coherent approach for innovators, to facilitate the export, the scale-up of your products and services. It's to ensure a rational use of available resources, and of course internally, so from an administrative point of view, we also have common drafting rules so that the document that we produce at the end, be it at the European or international level, reads and feels in a similar way. The portfolio, this is a bit to show you how our documents portfolio looks like in relationship with the international level. You see for CEN, we have documents that are based on ISO publications, are identical to ISO publication. However, a big chunk, it has no relation to ISO publications, so they are European documents. For CENELEC, there is the inverse situation. We have a very high percentage of documents that are identical to the international publications. This will become important as well when Luc will go further into the examples and the screening of the Horizon 2020 calls to show where and how there's a better way to use maybe the European route or the international route for standardization. What do we do in practice? We provide a platform for stakeholders in a specific area to come together. I mentioned the stakeholder base, the national expertise. What we do is facilitate all these different voices from the national level to come together to discuss, to find a compromise, to find and facilitate consensus at European level. We help ensure principles of transparency, openness, coherence, and consensus, and we foster European unanimity. It is in the spirit of Horizon 2020 why standardization has been given such a prominent role, because it does open up, if you want, the discussion around a specific research topic, around a specific innovation, to a very wide-ranging reach of stakeholders. Why do we do it? Because we help to build support for the European single market. Our position at the European level, as being recognized by the European Commission, gives us this important task to help produce documents and coherent technical specifications, service specification, products or processes that help make the European single market work. There is a strong link with legislation, because we are also working on legislative issues. We have requests, and Luc will explain that more, from the European Commission. We have standardization requests to help support the European single market. We also have this link to public policy that I showed you on the very first slide. We enhance the competitiveness of European players in the global market. We promote the interoperability of products and services. We facilitate trade by removing trade barriers, and we ensure the most efficient input of Europe into international standardization activities. Our ambitions to 2020 are to become a CEN and CENELEC an equal and strong partner in the innovation life cycle. We intend and we hope, we strive to become the preferred standardization partners of business and industry to get first mover advantage in global markets. We want to support, and we set out to support, the strengthening and diversification of Europe's industrial base. We provide proactive mechanisms for identification of new market trends and creation of new solutions. We adapt to meet evolving needs and technological opportunities and facilitate the uptake of new technologies. When I was talking about the market scale-up of innovation, we support the deployment of innovation and encourage market acceptance of innovative solutions. We cooperate with the research and development community, and timely inclusion of research results in standardization activities will become routine, hence why also the timing of this webinar to match and correspond with the second wave of calls in Horizon 2020. We aim to become the natural channel for innovators to bring ideas for development of standards and to help innovators scale up their innovation, their research results, and we encourage the renewal of expert base, hence this enlargement of our stakeholder base to innovation and research experts. The overview of our work: in our portfolio of standards, of European documents, of European standards, we're talking about 20,000 European standards. It will become clearer later on why this is important to note, because you will have, and some of the calls make reference to, a screening of standards, to an identification of relevant European standards to that particular technological aspect. All these standards can be consulted. We are producing about 1,500 standards a year. So standardization is a living organism. It's something that moves continuously, hence why you as expert need to be also continuously aware and updated and stay in touch with the national standardization organizations or ourselves, the CENELEC Management Center. We have over 400 technical bodies, technical committees. We are talking about more or less 50,000 experts, involved in standardization at a European level. And of course, we strive to involve all stakeholders. So this is a number that continuously increases because of the new topics and new standardization topics that are being developed. I mentioned here 400 technical bodies. To give you an idea what this means in practice, when we're talking about technical bodies, about technical committees, this is the structure of a technical committee. This gets replicated for the 400 technical committees plus that we have. The technical committee officers are chairperson and secretariat. The secretariat is always provided by one of our members. We're talking about national delegations of experts. They represent the national position. They represent your interests from the national level in a European discussion. They also have voting rights. And of course, it's open to observers, be it from European partners. Annex 3 organizations is something that is our own language with regards to societal, SME, or environmental, or workers' union representatives. We have affiliates, representatives of other technical bodies, representatives of the research and innovation community. However, all this includes, it's a group of representatives that do not have any voting rights. I stress the chairperson secretariat because it will become apparent who you can contact and who you should contact when there are questions with regard to standardization in your Horizon 2020 proposal. The same for the national delegations, which is a group, an entry point for you to contribute and become active in any of our technical committees, be it at CEN or CENELEC level. Now, the sectors we cover, and you will find back all the different sectors that are also covered by Horizon 2020, are a multitude of sectors in very simplified terms. ETSI, the third European Standardization Organization I mentioned, covers ICT issues. CEN and CENELEC cover all the other sectors. The match and if you want, the link to the sectors in Horizon 2020 is primarily to the industrial leadership pillar and the societal challenges pillar. What this sector division means, it means we have ongoing standardization work in all these sectors, happening either through technical committees or through different platforms, as I mentioned, of stakeholders developing European standards. This is the number, a recent percentage, a number of European standards that are published for the different sectors. As you can see, if you want the classic European sectors such as transport, building and civil engineering, electrical engineering, utilities and energy, have a very large number of standards. We are increasing our number of standards in the more recent sectors for standardization, such as services, environment, food. Now, moving on to what is a standard, the next slides will take you a bit through the different tools and processes we have in place. So the actual document, what we are producing as CEN and CENELEC. A standard is an agreed, repeatable way of doing something. It's a published document that contains a technical specification or other precise criteria designed to be used consistently. To remember throughout the presentation, and very important to note, is that standards are voluntary in nature. So a standard does not equal regulation. When we are producing standards, when you are producing standards as stakeholders, their application remains voluntary for the stakeholders at the national level. So they're voluntary reference documents that reflect the agreement, the consensus reached by the parties around the table. Our standards, and this is where the armory, if you want, of our standardization tools matches with the innovation lifecycle I showed you earlier, range from fundamental terminology, convention, sign symbol standards to more organizational and management standard or specification standards for product, services, systems, and performance. The documents we produce at the European level happen either in a technical committee, I mentioned the over 400 bodies that we have, or a more direct participation model in a workshop agreement platform. A technical committee will develop European standards, technical specifications, or technical reports. I will go briefly in all of these examples to show you what they mean in practice. The direct participation model, which is also mostly used in the wider research and development context, the workshop agreement platform, is an agreement between interested parties. all documents produced are voluntary in nature. The European standard. The European standard becomes the best solution when we're looking at a European homogeneous approach. I mentioned the 33 members we have, the 33 different national standardization organizations. Once we produce and publish a European standard, this becomes an identical standard at the national level in all our 33 members. That means you have a market deployment and a market access to all the European consumers and stakeholders. Basically, a document at the European level becomes an identical 33 national document. The European standard is developed through weighted voting, so the national delegations, yourselves, the stakeholders, undergo weighted voting to approve the standard at the end. There is an obligatory review of all our standards every 5 years to make sure they are up to date, they reflect the state of the art. For research and innovation projects to include in your actual project proposal, the development of a European standard is quite ambitious. However, there is enough scope to include in a research and innovation project the revision of a European standard, contribution to a European standard, or the initiation of a European standard. However, due to the actual development time of a European standard, and these are the different steps that the European standard goes through, it is more difficult to actually develop a European standard from start to finish within a research project. A European standard, like any other project in any other business, starts with a proposal. There's an evaluation, a decision, a drafting and consensus building, a discussion of stakeholders starts, a public inquiry happens, comments are being considered, the approval of the standard, and then the publication. The detailed time frame is here. The shortest time frame we have for a European standard from start to finish is 29 months. The maximum time frame we have set ourselves as European Standards Organization is 33.5 months. You see, this time frame makes it difficult to develop the standard from start to finish in a Horizon 2020 project. However, you'll see in concrete examples, European standards and contribution to European standards has been successfully addressed by past research projects. The mechanism, contribution and discussion around the European standards happens through national parties, through national experts. The members send their experts. There is an involvement of all interested stakeholders, from SMEs to societal to environmental to innovation, to gather together and debate and discuss what is the best and most common, most consensus-driven solution at the European level. A technical specification, which is the other document a European technical committee develops, is the best solution for new technologies. There is no immediate need for a European standard, so it's a pre-standard, a pre-step to a standard. The review is obligatory at every 3 years because of this, if you want, more lighter approach, and it does also fit in a project lifetime due to the fact it tends to be developed a lot faster than a European standard because there are not all the steps of a European standard undertaken. A technical report is a solution that is best to provide information on technical content, such as publication of data obtained from a survey, data on work from other organizations. As the title calls it, it is a report. It's adopted through a simple majority voting within a technical committee. There is no maximum lifetime, and it also fits in a project lifetime should you think the actual content of the technical report can be useful for your project proposal. A comparison between the 3 different documents developed by a technical committee. These are a bit the terminology, if you want, of how work happens and what happens at the national level, the different inquiry steps, the approval process that happens through the national standards organizations, the voting that happens in practice for a European standard versus a technical report, and the mandatory publication that I mentioned for a European standard becomes an identical document in 33 countries. For a technical specification or a technical report, only an announcement of the document is made at the national level. I remind you, all documents are voluntary. The workshop agreement, which is the other, if you want, platform that we facilitate, so that happens outside a technical committee, is the best solution for reaching consensus of identified stakeholders. So imagine this platform as a direct participation platform. So it doesn't go through national delegations principle like the technical committees. it goes through direct participation of identified stakeholders. Also, we don't have a geographical European limitation for a workshop agreement. Participants from anywhere around the world can take part in this platform. Workshop agreements are looking at developing technical specification, guidance material, best practices, and so on. Workshop agreements, in simple layman's terms, are, if you want, a pre-standard on a new idea, on something that is maybe not mature enough or developed enough to be deployed across all of Europe. So it's more niche subjects that are developed in workshop agreements. Hence why they are also the preferred, we see from experience, the preferred standardization tool, standardization document to be used by research projects. The review is obligatory every 3 years, and as I mentioned, it fits in a project lifetime because the past research projects have been developed between 6 to 18 to 20 months. So there's a shorter time frame to develop a workshop agreement. Moving on to Horizon 2020 and the project proposals, Luc will take you through how project proposals can address standardization in Horizon 2020. We are going to make the slides available. I see there are questions coming in from different participants. Some slides and some of the questions that you're asking, if I have gone fast through the slides, we will provide additional information to clarify some of the terminology. I realize I have been going quite fast through the different documents that we produce. But we will make those available, bearing in mind as well the time and the fact I've already taken half an hour for the first part of our webinar. Over to Luc.
Thank you, Andrea. Allow me first to give some statistics about Horizon 2020. Our Research Integration Unit screened the 2016 calls that are currently open, and we counted that 38 out of 101 late calls were making reference to standardization. And for societal challenges, there were 43 out of 174 calls making this reference. So on average, 30%, which percentage is in line with the last FP7 calls. Andrea explained before the important role that standardization has to play in support of the market uptake of research and innovation project outcomes. In what follows, I will give concrete examples of how current Horizon 2020 calls have included standardization in their topic descriptions, and we will then continue with examples of past or current FP7 projects that have successfully addressed standardization. So some of the call topics explicitly refer to specific standards within an identified technical committee in CEN or CENELEC to be one of the outcomes of the selected project. In a number of calls, standardization is the main objective of the call, but in other cases, the link with standards is put in a much more generic way, and it can be as weak as aligning with existing standards without even the need to contribute to standardization. In the next slides, we will give examples of different levels of importance given to standardization in the calls, which ranges from standardization being a main objective of the call to the rather weak requirement of only using the relevant standards. So let us start with 3 examples where standardization is a main objective, and in this kind of cases we typically talk about the coordination and support action that is called for. So this first example is the bio-based industries coordination and support action. The slide quotes some extracts from the topic scope. And project proposals are asked to evaluate standards, but are also asked to feed application sector experiences into the CEN work in our technical committee 411 on bio-based products. or they are asked to feed into other technical committees. And so this is a first example of a very strong requirement to link with an identified CEN technical committee. The second example is also very explicit in what it is about. So it's about standardization of pre-analytical and analytical procedures for in vitro diagnostics in personalized medicine. There is here no mention of which TC should be involved, but the subject matter falls fully within the scope of our CEN Technical Committee 140 on in vitro diagnostic medical devices. And already under FP7, there was a similar call asking for standardization activities in support of in vitro diagnostics, and I will give later in the presentation some information on this related FP7 project called SPIDIA and how it contributed to standardization. This third example may not refer to standardization in its title, but it suffices to read the scope text to realize that contributions to the ongoing standardization activities under standardization mandate M518 are a must. This mandate requests standardization in the field of waste electrical and electronic equipment as addressed by the related directive of 2012. I will take here some time to explain what standardization mandates, or with their current name, standardization requests, are. Mandates or standardization requests are issued by the European Commission, who asks the European standards organizations to produce standards in support of European regulation or in support of European policies. The standards organizations can then decide to accept the mandate and start the standardization work, or they can also decide to not accept the mandate. For instance, when the timetable for the standards process is considered to be unrealistically short, or when the standardization stakeholders, most importantly industry, have concerns about the requested standards. Standardization activities in relation to this mandate 518 take place in the CEN Technical Committee, in the CENELEC Technical Committee, 11X, and proposers against this topic thus will have to demonstrate how they intend to contribute to these standardization activities. At this point, so with these examples of explicit requests for inputs into standardization activities in mind, it's appropriate to make a first set of considerations. First, these are open calls, so it will be important to demonstrate as consortium the project's capacity to contribute to standardization. The FP7 examples, as I will show later, indicate that successful proposers often are already involved in standardization. But there may be benefits in also involving a standards organization in a consortium. Because of the participation policy, CEN and CENELEC do not join themselves consortia, but participation in consortia is delegated to one or more of our national members. They take up the role then of supporting the project's outputs and to go through the standardization processes. And of course, because the very same CEN and CENELEC members are also member organizations of ISO and IEC, their involvement in a consortium will also open up opportunities for international standardization work to the consortium. Andrea explained in her presentation so that we have 33 members which are also all part or member of ISO and IEC. Then a final comment. In addition to the possibility that project experts can participate as a member of their national delegation in the activities of ETC, CEN and CENELEC also offer the option for a project to directly liaise with the technical committee during the project's duration. Such liaison opens a way to contribute, but not to vote, because decision-making is left to the national delegations. The three examples that I've shown till now were so about coordination, support, action calls, where standardization was the main objective. The next set of examples addresses innovation calls or research innovation calls, where the main objective is of course on the research and innovation aspects, but where there is made a reference to standards to support the market deployment of the outcomes. In the three examples following, the reference to standardization is made in an explicit way. The first example relates to new insulation materials and makes explicit reference to the activities of CEN TC 350 on the sustainability of construction work. Of course, this TC is not necessarily the only technical committee of relevance to the call topic. For instance, CEN Technical Committee 89 on the thermal performance of buildings and building components may also be very relevant. The call makes reference to standards in two ways: as user of the standards, but also as contributor to the standardization process. The second example refers to the CEN Technical Committee 411 that we already addressed before. And in this context, I comment that we believe that the sustainability schemes for bio-based products that the projects are asked to develop may also get more weight if they can be the subject of standardization. The third example then relates to the area of smart grid standardization, where a lot of standardization work has taken place since 2010 under the related mandate 490. Project proposers under this call should include a good knowledge of the standards that are out there, but the call itself does not suggest the need for a lot of new standardization work as a result of the project. So for this kind of projects, where it will be important to link with specific standardization activities, be it as user and as contributor, project proposers will definitely need to have a sufficient knowledge of the standardization landscape in that area. And some information on how to find out about standardization is given on the next few slides. So a first entry point to know about standardization activities is via the CENELEC web pages under the Research Integration tab. Through these pages, clicking on the left on the Tools for Researchers tab and then Standards in Horizon 2020 and the Societal Challenges tab, you will, for instance, get access to standardization activities that are relevant to each societal challenge. What we are providing you under each header here are hyperlinks to the relevant sector-specific information pages on the CEN or CENELEC website. And the same structure is used to link with the late field. The two following slides give you information on how to access detailed information on a specific TC's work program on the CEN website, or at the next slide on the CENELEC website. For CEN, first access the CEN Standards website via the URL shown and then select technical bodies on the screen. This will provide you with a list of all technical bodies. Information shown will then be links to the published standards, the ongoing standardization projects, and where the PDF logo is shown, you can download a recent version of the TC's general description and objectives. You will also see often the indication CEN/SS followed by a number. SS here stands for subsector and is nothing more than an identifier in our database. And it means that the published standards or standards under approval do not follow from work in one of our own technical committees, but rather are resulting from the adoption of international standards through the agreement process with ISO that Andrea mentioned before. And you can also search, starting from this webpage, the individual standards via the standard search screen tab. Similar information is available from the CENELEC website. From the CENELEC's homepage, you will be able to access information on a technical body, and information shows again links to the published standards or to the ongoing standardization projects. And again, where the TPDF logo is shown, you can access the recent version of the general TC description and objectives. In terms of naming and numbering of CENELEC technical committees, it's useful to know the following tricks. First, CENELEC TC numbers, they follow the same IEC, the same numbering as in IEC. This is not the case in CEN. In CEN, for instance, our health informatics technical committee has the number 251, while in ISO it's 215. But so in CENELEC, the number is the very same as the technical committee, the corresponding technical committee in IEC. When it says CENELEC/SR followed by a number, it means that there is no CENELEC technical committee in Europe. And so all work happens in this case at the IEC level. SR stands here for Reporting Secretariat. When the identification number of the TC is followed by an X, it means that a significant part of the work happens at IEC level, but that there is still some EU-specific work too. And finally, a TC with just a number means that the EU-specific work is an important share of the total scope of the TC. Remember in this context, as Andrea already mentioned, that over 70% of the CENELEC deliverables are identical to those of IEC. So on the previous slides, I did show how you can retrieve information from our website. And do not hesitate to contact our research help desk, which is me or Andrea, for help. But when you contact us, bear in mind that we do not have the intention nor the resource to draft the standardization chapter in your proposal for you. We cannot give this kind of detailed inputs to your proposal during the drafting stage. But a member of CEN or CENELEC could do this when there is the intention that this member joins the consortium. And the slide further wants to remind you to consider two aspects to be borne in mind when drafting the project proposal. First, where you are in a position to identify the relevant TC, ensure that you include in the proposal the intention for the project to liaise with this CEN or CENELEC TC. And the second aspect that is important is that TC experts, even the chairman, cannot formally participate in a consortium to represent CEN or CENELEC. Only a CEN or CENELEC member can, in line with our participation policy, only a CEN and CENELEC member can claim this role. And I will later, when mentioning the FP7 Restart project, give an example where it was not possible that CEN financed the participation of a TC chairman. So far, the examples given listed the TC that had to be involved with full identification of the TC number. In case of these factories of the future call in the area of additive manufacturing, it is equally clear that the project will need to link with standardization organizations as a means to support the development of those additive manufacturing technologies. In Europe, the relevant body is the CEN Technical Committee 438, and the next slide goes a bit in detail on this. For additive manufacturing, CEN always recognized the fact that standardization is primarily an international activity with standardization work ongoing in ISO and ASTM. So when the technical committee was created earlier this year, the objective to go for international standards first was confirmed as first objective. Through this TC, and as is made very clear in the TC's second objective, CEN members wanted to strengthen the link between research programs at European level and standardization in additive manufacturing. Of course, standardization considerations as we made them earlier, that project liaison exists and can be applied under Guide 25, also applies to this kind of areas. So the examples so far all had very clear instructions on how to link with standardization. On the next slide now we will enter into call topics where the link with standardization becomes much less prescriptive. So on this slide 3 examples are given of call topics where the link with standardization is less prescriptive. Let's look at the first example. In this example, in the bio-based industries call, standardization is presented as one of the ways through which the market update of the project outcomes is supportive. There were several examples under the bio-based industries call where 100% identical wording as the wording shown in italics was given. The next slide is a second example of the bio-based industries call with this identical wording. And the wording that refers to the need to address standardization may even be more generically worded, as shown on the next slide. In this call topic, the need to consider standardization is simply mentioned without any additional clarification. So, in this kind of situations, where the standardization link is given without explicit instructions, what would be the advice that we could offer? Let's move to the next slide for this. So for this kind of projects, and of course a fortiori this includes those projects where the need for standardization was much more pronounced and explicit. So we suggest that for projects that they include a standardization work package into the proposal and include one of our members in charge of the work package as partner in the consortium. Of course, it will in many cases not be possible to predict the standardization aspects in a project during the proposal drafting stage. So there will be a need to do some analysis work during the earlier stages of the project and to address a number of questions during the project's lifetime, such as which outcomes are relevant to be brought to standardization, does a standard exist, does a TC exist, is a workshop agreement a suitable approach. And so all these considerations lead to the following good practice approach for proposal writers as shown on the next slide. As mentioned already a few times before, our first recommendation is to include a national standards body in your consortium. They will be able to support the standardization work package in the description of work throughout the duration of the project, up to the final delivery. And steps 2 to 4 on the slide cover aspects that you also should bear in mind. I would like to add a few comments based on experience from the past. First, when you intend to contribute to standardization, do not make all project deliverables to be restricted to the partners, because a standardization committee may wish to see also certain supporting findings. And second, the final deliverable of the standardization work package is best a report on the standardization process with an indicator where the standard can be obtained. This is because standards, whether they are European standards but also TRs, technical specification, even CEN workshop agreements, they are publicly available but not freely available. And with this we mean that they are sold by the CEN or CENELEC members. So do not put in the description of work that the CWA, the CEN or the CENELEC workshop agreement, will be freely available from the project website. And so when this comment now relates to copyright, a third consideration relates to another IPR aspect, namely patents. And this is addressed on this slide. First, I want to draw attention on CEN-CENELEC Guide 8, which describes the CEN-CENELEC guidelines for implementation of a common policy on patents. Patents are, of course, a major means for exploiting research outcomes. But our experience is that they are not as hot yet for CEN-CENELEC as they are in the telecommunications and ICT sector. When talking about patents in a standards context, our interest goes to the so-called essential patents. These are those patents that would necessarily be infringed when implementing a standard because there are no commercially acceptable non-infringing alternatives for implementing that standard. Patents are thus essential for a standard when it is not possible at the time of standards making to make a product or method that complies with the standard without infringing the IPR on that patent. The CENELEC patent policy requests stakeholders participating in the technical work, and particularly the patent holders themselves, to proceed to early disclosures and identification of patents that may be considered. And that may be considered to be essential for the future use of the standards, so that are considered to be essential patents. And a declaration form, which is part of CENELEC Guide 8, exists to this effect. In the case of essential patents and standards, patent holders will have to ensure that they are willing to negotiate licenses under so-called fair, reasonable and non-discriminatory terms and conditions with applicants throughout the world. And finally, it's worth mentioning that performance standards can avoid the need to rely on this kind of standard essential patents. This slide here is the final one that refers to examples of the recently published calls. It refers to the category of references to standards that are made in a very weak form. National standard bodies, in this case definitely the larger ones, have in-house expertise that goes beyond the knowledge of the processes and also covers knowledge of the technologies. They further have access to the full portfolio of the standards contents, where an outsider has to pay for the standards. For this kind of reasons, it may be worth to consider national standards bodies also as consultants to a project. Okay, so we have so far addressed a somewhat detailed review of references to standardization in Horizon 2020 calls. Let's now look back to some examples from FP7. These examples are split into two categories. We will address projects where standardization experts were involved without an intermediary role by us here in CCMC, and projects where the first contact was made with us. So first looking into those projects that successfully addressed standardization without a CENELEC member involvement. The first example relates to the transport call of 2008. In this case, project partners, including the coordinator, had leading roles in relevant CEN technical committees. And the project outcomes were fed into ongoing standardization work in these CEN-TCs. An example are the project outcomes from round-robin tests that were integrated into a CEN-TC 226 Working Group 6 standard revision that is currently under formal vote. The second example is a project in response to an FP7 NMP call with explicit reference to standardization. Again, a very strong link with standardization was present in the consortium, as conveners of 3 working groups in CEN-TC 3.8 on durability of wood and wood-based products were actively participating. But as I already mentioned, the participating legal entities were the conveners companies, not the TC. With this third project, we have another example where the initial idea of having the CEN-TC 187 chair to join as a kind of CEN representative did not work. Here too, the chair's company had to be the beneficiary financing the TC's chair's involvement in the project. The project is still ongoing, with a substantial list of new work items in standardization resulting from it, including intended standardization work at the international ISO level. Now some words on the SPIDIA project. I already made reference to this project when talking about the Horizon 2020 calls, where standardization is a main objective. For this project, several project members had already at the project initiation stage strong links with CEN TC 140 on in vitro diagnostic medical devices. In terms of standards resulting from this project, several CEN technical specifications have already been published or are about to be published. And the same documents are now also up for voting to become new work items for EN ISO standards under ISO TC 212, with whom the CEN TC 140 has close contacts. The final example, the Refresco project, led me to making my earlier comment about the need for a sufficient availability of project outcomes to the standardizers, as those TC participants that are not in the consortium also need sufficient information and access to material. In this case, the Working Group 2 convener, a partner in the project, reminded his coordinator that in order to influence the work of Working Group 2 with project outcomes, it's important to provide the working group members with all relevant information about their topics and not only with essences or abstracts. This copyright issue has to be kept in mind when the description of work is drafted. As with several of the earlier mentioned projects, this project again will contribute to a number of updates of existing ENs. So at this point, we can list a number of observations from the examples given. As we learned from the Restar example, TCs are no legal entities, so participation has to happen through the companies of the standardization experts. As we learned from the Working Group 2 convener who participates in Refresco, when a TC is involved in standardizing a project's outcome, its experts need access to all relevant project information. And then, concerning the standardization deliverables resulting from a research project, it is fair to say that new ENs originated from a project are exceptions, although revisions to ENs can happen where the project has existing strong links with ETC. This can be easily understood by the fact that ENs carry with them the obligation of becoming an identical national standard in 33 European countries and the obligation of withdrawal of conflicting standards. All of this is a very complex step when we consider brand new innovations that aim to gain their market share. Better is to support this kind of early innovative developments by standards deliverables that can more easily coexist with other approaches till such time as the market has validated them. More common is therefore to deliver a technical specification, a technical report or a CWA at the end of the RTD project. When I indicated before that I would split between projects with and without a member involvement, this one falls a bit between the two in the sense that the standardization entity involved is very closely linked with the national standards body, in this case DIN. The coordinator of the project in this case also runs the DIN secretariat for ISO TC 48 and CEN TC 332, which are both TCs on laboratory equipment. For this project, one of the project deliverables will be a CEN workshop agreement to describe a framework for measures to achieve sustainable water use and treatment in chemical industry and related process industry sectors. The workshop to develop the CEN workshop agreement started earlier this year. I think it's fair to say that sustainability concepts have been over the recent years the subject of a number of CWAs. And I suspect that it is at this point still too early to have ENs that standardize the full landscape of emerging technologies. So let's now look into those projects that successfully address standardization thanks to the involvement of one of our members. And so When I go through the examples, I will seek to point out the added value of having the member on board by describing also what was particularly tricky in terms of standardization for this project. The LCE for Roads project on the present slide addresses a methodology to characterize safer and greener road products and infrastructures. The project will, among others, deliver a CEN workshop agreement that will define indicators to be used in sustainability assessment of roads. As the scope of the CWA relates to activities taking place in 2 CEN technical committees, there is a strong need to ensure consistency with the other work. For this project, our Spanish member AENOR had joined the consortium as a partner. Considering the links with other ongoing work, a careful approach was needed, for which the involvement of AENOR was definitely contributing to the successful start of the standardization activities. First, AENOR invested the standardization landscape and went to speak to the CEN-TCs involved in order to ensure that they understood where the links were with the TC work. Having the support of existing TCs is important, as the national standards bodies would not like to see standardization actions taking place that lead to an inconsistent set of standards. Then, talking with the TC 227 officials, AENOR concluded that a CEN workshop agreement will be the preferred option, as it is a pre-standardization result that could later be included in a CEN TC 227 document. The project further explicitly confirmed its intention to fully use CEN TC 350 methodology, meaning, for example, that the life cycle assessment parameters defined in the relevant EN shall be used with no modifications. And then, having ensured the support of these 2 TCs, the start of the CWA process could be announced recently on the 6th of November. A second example, where standardization actions might have faced difficulties without the support by an experienced member, is the Superclean Q project. This project is about the development of processes and quality procedures for the valorization of recycled plastics for food contact applications. For this project, CCMC ensured that a member, in this case it's Dutch member NEN, was involved right from the project start. The description of work had described the development of a CEN workshop agreement as standardization deliverable, but early discussions with the officials of CEN TC 249 on plastics led to a change of plans, and the aim became to develop a technical specification in the CEN TC. Here it was important that NEN started to talk with TC 249 at an early stage of the project, so that there was no delay incurred in starting the formal processes, and as a result, the project was still able to lead to the publication of a new CEN-TS during its lifetime. A third example is the For Fun project, which deals with the assessment of humans to chemicals. The upfront intention was to deliver a CEN workshop agreement based on the project's outcomes, and the initial contacts were again here with CCMC. We approached our Austrian member, ASI, who had been active in support of creating CEN Project Committee 416 on health risk assessment of chemicals, and who had therefore a good understanding of the technical area. As a result, it was possible to define the scope of the CWA in such a way that it was acceptable to all standardization interests, and the CWA was delivered successfully in 2015. The examples so far have always addressed standardization work in CEN or CENELEC, but in some cases the standardization activity may really take place at the international level. The Stallion project is an example where CEN-CENELEC were approached to join the project, but CCMC ensured that TKE, which is the German Commission for Electronic and Information Technologies of DIN and VDE, and so the German CENELEC member, joined the project. Also, so note in this context that VDE is responsible for the daily operations of the DKE. And through its membership in IEC, DKE's involvement enabled the start of a new standardization project in IEC. This final example is not about the project, but I would like to finish with it as it illustrates a specific way of how a European, in this case CENELEC workshop agreement deliverable, can link with international standardization. So even though IEC Technical Committee 113 deals with the characterization of specification of graphene-related material, the proposers saw the necessity for this workshop due to the fact that the participants of the graphene flagship were seen to rather try to avoid formal standardization due to complexity and time-consuming processes. So, while the graphene flagship is aware of the general benefits of standardization, there is some struggling with the formal aspects. The intention of the graphene workshop is to propose the development of formal standards at IEC, but based on the CENELEC workshop agreements published before. The close interaction will be ensured through the workshop chair, who is also secretary of the IEC Technical Committee. And it is expected that the workshop process will help to bridge the gap between the research and the standardization community. The fact of developing a CWA can thus be a first step, not only to a formal CEN or CENELEC deliverable, but also towards an internationally approved deliverable. I would like to finish my part here with some practical advice to project proposers who wish to include standardization in their proposal. First, it should be clear by now that only our members can join a consortium as a project partner or as a subcontractor, and that CCMC will not join project advisory boards. Our advice will thus be to develop, with the support of one of our members, a work package that will lead to a standards deliverable, for instance a CWA, but also a technical specification or technical report if the work takes place in a technical committee. Running projects can join standardization in a technical committee as liaison, but also through joining the national groups that feed into CENELEC or ISO IEC. And finally, if a project starts, its contacts with the standardization community at an early stage, it is more easy to address any unforeseen reasons for delay, such as the need to define the scope of the standardization work, ensuring that the scope becomes acceptable to all stakeholders, or to ensure that the process can be changed from CEN workshop agreement into technical specifications, or vice versa. So at this point, I finished my part on the detailed examples on the current present calls and on some examples of the past, and I pass the floor again to Andrea.
Okay, thank you. And thank you as well for all the questions you are sending through. We will, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, merge and group all the questions and make sure there is a follow-up answer to the more generic questions. Of course, all specific call-related questions you can send confidentially to Luc or myself to so that we can guide you and answer on standardization aspects for your particular project proposal. Now, I would say reaching to the end part, the last part of our webinar, I will take you now through the more generic or more, I would say, summary aspects of how and what type of support there is available for project proposers. First and foremost, when thinking about standardization in relation to your research project, and if you remember one of the first slides, we showed you the overlap of the innovation lifecycle with the research lifecycle. This is a breakdown of thinking process in terms of a research project development. When looking at identifying new areas from your perspective, from the research perspective, think about the screening of existing standards. that can help you to either identify standards that are relevant for your new area or identify gaps that can be addressed by your project proposal. So that is an advantage, an extra point, if you want, in adding something new to your project. When reading the draft programs, the calls, the proposals, look at the standardization need, the standardization potential. Luc mentioned over and over again the reference to standards. Please bear in mind, reference to standards refers to standards linked to CEN, CENELEC, or ETSI. Don't hesitate to contact us. It will add to your evaluation points. It will add in the evaluation process to correctly address standardization. Identifying standards, performing the research project, of course, throughout the research project lifetime. As I mentioned, standardization is a living organism. You can identify standards that can be relevant to your project results. Protect, diffuse, and implement project results. Use standards and standardization as a transfer channel. Our mechanism of 33 members, our structure of having 33 national members that make available, that publish, that announce all the documents produced by CEN and CENELEC is an incredible diffusion tool and exploitation tool for your project. It means your results are being made available and announced by 33 national members, which always surpasses the size of a consortium. When evaluating research programs and project results, standards and standardization are used in the evaluation criteria by evaluators, which is part as well of our discussion with the European Commission, that evaluators should look at the correct way that standards have been addressed. The integrated approach, there is a brochure on that. There is also a guide for project proposers, which you will receive the link of, which you can consult in more detail to get, if you want, more inside information on how to address standardization correctly in your proposal. Now, in summarizing up what you have heard, why are we talking about standards for research, development, and innovation actions? Because you can tap into the potential opportunities. Standards provide a mechanism for you to transfer innovative know-how to the market. They are a powerful tool to disseminate research results. Through the platforms we offer, either technical committees or workshop agreement platforms, there's an opportunity for you to network, to validate your research, to engage other stakeholders that are not part of your consortia. You can enhance the economic value of your research projects. You help access to public procurement markets. There's a strong aspect of comparability and interoperability because you manage to test your research results through the standardization community, through other experts that are working on similar ideas and similar subjects as yourselves. The reassurance to European consumers due to the structure and the embodiment of what European standardization means through our place on the European market. There is a strong reassurance for European consumers of research results if they have been passed through or if they're going through standardization, and there's a faster and easier access to markets. All these arguments are in line with what Horizon 2020 stands for, which is more innovation to the market for the consumers. The steps to consider when looking at addressing standardization in your project proposal. We mentioned this over and over again. The success of a project, Luc has given several examples, are the contact with your national standardization organization. The national standardization organization is your entryway, is your gateway into the standardization work, be it at European or international level. Through the national standardization organizations, you can manage, or you will have an access to consult all the standards published. You have a discussion partner to identify maybe gaps in your project. You can also identify, together with the national standardization body, relevant technical committees for the research proposed. You can understand maybe more on the role of standardization, express your needs on standardization. If you have identified maybe gaps, you need to address maybe standardization plans or roadmaps in your proposal. You can have this dialogue with the national standardization organizations, how best to address this within the time and the budget available for your project. And you create partnerships. The next slides will go more into detail on how to contribute to standardization. Three different options we have selected, which are more or less in line with the project calls. However, we know each project is a unique project. So our role and our expertise and our job is to consult you ad hoc, confidentially on your project proposal. These are only options. They are not exhaustive. It's just to give you an idea on how the thinking process goes when you're looking at a call and standardization is mentioned or you would like to consider standardization. Remember, always the best chances to pass evaluation positively is to engage a CEN or CENELEC member in your consortium. I will explain later why we, here in Brussels, working for the CEN CENELEC Management Center, do not participate in projects as partners. However, our members do, and they have the role to represent the European standardization platform. Remember also, all standards at European level are proposed via a CEN or CENELEC member. One of the questions we received in the meantime was who can initiate a CEN workshop agreement. It is you as stakeholders. However, you will always need a CEN or CENELEC member to take you through the actual process of proposing a new standard, proposing a new workshop agreement, taking you through the process of developing this. Our dialogue partners, if you want, in terms of formalities, are always the CEN CENELEC members. So the discussion and the proposals come through the CEN CENELEC members. Of course, the content is provided and developed by yourselves. Now, going into the detail of these three options, I will show you a bit the thinking process that you can apply when looking at calls under the current open calls under Horizon 2020. Directly or contributing directly in a technical committee. First, some calls showed identify already the technical committee that should be consulted. We have over 400 technical committees. You need to identify the relevant technical committee. Our slides will include links to where you can consult all the technical committees of CEN and CENELEC. You can get in touch with the technical committee secretariats. The technical committee secretariats are always one of our members. Or you can contact your own national member directly. National members have access to all the technical committees and all the work programs. So think of your national member the same as you would probably think of us here in Brussels. They have access to all this information at the national level, both European and international. Discuss, of course, if time allows and you're not pressured by deadlines, so please don't leave the thinking about standardization to the last week. Discuss your contribution with the technical committee to assess the feasibility for a new standards proposal. You might find in discussion with the technical committee that maybe a similar standard is already being discussed, that the new idea on a standard will already be introduced. Or you might assess with the technical committee that there is a gap you can add to in your project proposal. Plan the standardization work to feed into the technical committee. Luc mentioned the different criteria you need to take into account. The technical committees need to have access to your research data, to your research findings. You need to be a partner with the technical committee. There needs to be this dialogue. You cannot come towards the end of your project with a fully developed European standard to present it to a technical committee when there hasn't been any dialogue before. The question from the technical committee will be, we're really sorry, but we don't know where this is coming from. There hasn't been any discussion. We cannot just simply accept and adopt a standard proposed by a project. Budget a project liaison and expert contribution in your proposal. I will give you more detail on what a project liaison means on slides further on. Always bear in mind you can contact us for support. Luc or myself from the research help desk. The second option, proposing a standard. It doesn't necessarily mean a European standard. It can be a technical specification. It can be a technical report. It can be a workshop agreement. All these can be included as part of a work package in your proposal. Again, the first step is identifying the relevant technical committee for your proposal. If there is no technical committee on your particular topic, this is a gap that you can identify in your project proposal and suggest you will develop and propose that new standards be developed. Define a standardization gap. Partner with one of the CEN or CENELEC members in your consortium. They will be in the position to take you through the different steps, to identify with you what are the gaps and how these gaps are best addressed. Plan the standardization work. If there is a technical committee, however, they are not addressing your specific topic, it's an opportunity to identify in your work package opportunities to feed into this technical committee, either by the development of a technical specification or the initiation of a European standard or a technical report. If there is no technical committee, there is an opportunity to develop a pre-standard, a CEN or CENELEC workshop agreement. All this can be budgeted under a standardization work package. Experts, meetings, time, money for the secretariat, money and the actual partnership with one of the members. Budget a project liaison, which I will explain, which can allow you to participate and connect with the technical committee. Again, don't hesitate to contact us for any of these questions. The third option and the last option, which appears in a lot of calls that we have screened, they're looking at developing a standardization plan. This usually relates to gaps that have been identified by the European Commission or by the work program developers with regards to standardization, or a revision of current standards is needed. Again, the partnership with a member will allow you to develop a plan that fits with the structure and with the system we have in place at the European level at CEN and CENELEC. It will allow you to identify the relevant technical committees for your proposal, who will be the receivers of these plans. When you develop a standardization plan, it needs to find a home. The home is a technical committee. If it is in an area where a technical committee is active in CEN or CENELEC. If it is a new area, then it's an opportunity for you to start a new standardization work, such as a workshop agreement. Again, a budget consideration needs to happen. It is a lot easier to include these at the project proposal stage, rather than once your project has started to identify, now we have a standardization gap, we need to go towards the standards organizations, towards CEN or CENELEC, to start standards, and the question will be, yes, but who will fund this? Because the budget hasn't been considered up front. Again, you can contact the Research Help Desk for support. The contribution of one of our members is described on this slide, and this is a bit the support, the guidance, the help that one of the CEN-CENELEC members can give you. On the first slide you have seen there are 33 members. Each one of you present today in the webinar has at the national level a national standardization organization you can contact. We will also provide you with a list of the innovation and research contact at the national members level for you to have a direct contact on someone who is familiar with Horizon 2020, who understands the context of innovation and research and standardization. The support a CEN and CENELEC member can give are the analysis of standardization potential, the overview of current standards, state of the art, what exists, be it at the European or international level. They can help you in identifying the gaps and help you draft the proposals for new standardization work, be it either input to existing work, towards technical committees, be it development of new standards documents, of roadmaps, of plans, of workshop agreement. They also provide links with ongoing standardization. They are the ones that can help you in drafting and assessing which technical committees your project should liaise with, or which technical committee should receive your input from standardization. They can guide you on the general standardization process, and of course help with the publication of the final deliverable, noting that CEN and CENELEC keep the copyright. All this, what we have explained today throughout the past hour and a half, is information that you can have and explanations that you can have from any of our members. So your dialogue and your partnership with a member as soon as possible, if you are considering standardization in your proposal, is a very important point to keep in mind. Our participation policy, Luc mentioned that CCMC, which is the acronym of the CEN-CENELEC Management Center, cannot participate in projects as a partner, is because CEN and CENELEC as organizations will not join a research project as a partner. A CEN or CENELEC national member, the 33 members I mentioned, however, can represent CEN or CENELEC and can join a research project. Why this is in place is because we are not eligible for Framework Partnership or Horizon 2020 funding. We are already funded by the European Commission. However, our national members can take the secretariat of the technical group and develop deliverables and become partners in a project. Also, the research help desk, as presented at the very beginning, is Luc and myself. We do not have the necessary expertise in terms of technical expertise, nor the necessary resources to become partners in all the projects. Our members, however, do and are regularly becoming partners in research projects. Contacting the national standardization bodies is facilitated by us, and we also have this network of correspondence that I mentioned before on research and innovation issues at the national level. So your counterpartners on research and innovation issues at the national standardization level, which we will provide you the link with so you can access and contact any of our members. The project liaison policy I mentioned is a recent policy we put in place. It's aimed primarily at European research projects. We have put this in place to facilitate, if you want, European projects to also access directly technical committees. So irrespective of the fact that you have or not included a work package on standardization, that you are addressing standardization within your project as an entity can also request a liaison with any of our technical committees. The project, in practice, this means that the project representative can participate and can send an expert to the technical committee meetings, which of course ensures synergies between your research work and our technical standardization work. It also allows the technical committee to have this early dialogue with a research project from the beginning, so that when you do come up with proposals that should be fed into a technical committee, it's not a surprise on both sides. There is a budget to consider for a project liaison. There is a project liaison costs 525 euros per year per technical committee. So of course there are also expert costs which you need to consider. Technical committees usually meet 2 times a year. Meetings can take place all over Europe, so those are also costs to consider, but this is to give you an idea of what a project liaison costs in actual administrative cost of accessing a technical committee. The CEN and CENELEC tools we have in place, which you will receive the links for, are all available online on our website. And they are, if you want more detailed tools that you can consult at your own ease. We have a guide to project proposers on Horizon 2020. The guide takes you through the different steps and thinking in terms of addressing standardization in a project proposal. It also gives examples of past research projects and how they have addressed standardization, and it also has a checklist for project proposers to discuss and to look at. The fact sheet on IPR and standards is a fact sheet we have published together with the IPR help desk. Luc mentioned a bit the relationship between standards and patents. This fact sheet goes into more detail on the standards patents relationship and explains how patents are addressed in European standards. For our members, we have also developed a guidance document on how to link with European research project, which means that when you do contact one of our members, you will have an expert on how to deal with research projects in your dialogue. For those of you who are national contact points online, we have also developed a leaflet aimed directly at national contact points. We work with national contact points closely together. We have been invited to different cluster meetings of national contact points, so that is something also that we can respond positively to, where of course we tailor our presentation to the actual subject and the area of the national contact point network. The leaflet is looking at how you as multipliers can inform your clients on standardization, and of course as well who your national contact should be at the standardization level. We published also a brochure on the role of standards in support to research and innovation, which develops further the life cycle I showed at the very beginning, the innovation and research life cycle. We also have 20 case studies which highlight successful research projects which have contributed to standardization. They are concrete research projects that have either developed a workshop agreement, a technical report, technical specification, or European standard. So you can see the background to why the researchers have considered standardization to be important, who their main partner was from the standardization community, either working together with a technical committee or one of our members, and how the process of standardization developed further within the project, coming to the end with an actual document, with an actual standard. And we have also recently launched 4 training videos on standardization and standardization related to Horizon 2020. Some of the videos are aimed more at our own members, at the standardization community, on how we should engage better with the innovation community. Some, however, are directly aimed at the researchers, the innovators, and how standardization can support Horizon 2020. We have come almost to the end of our slides, which will probably allow us a bit to take 1 or 2 of the questions which we see on our screen here from yourselves. But in summarizing the relationship between standards and innovation is to keep in mind that standards promote innovation. Standards support the creation of new markets through the tool and the power they have at a European level, through the network of European standards organizations, and implicitly our 33 members. Standards ensure the quality of products and services. They support research. They enhance the visibility and the deployment of your research results and of your innovation. They facilitate trades. They support the compliance with regulation of new technologies, products, and services. Quite a few calls make a direct link to direct to European directives, to standardization requests to the European Standards Organization. So standards and the link with standards can help you in showing compliance with these. Standards increase safety and environmental protection. They are universally recognized because of our status at the European level, the fact that we are the formal standards organizations recognized by the European Commission, through our relationship and agreement with the international standards organizations. They are a powerful, universal, global tool. And of course, standards also accelerate time to market. I will take a few of the questions we see online, just to make sure that you will receive, I know we have talked quite a few acronyms throughout the presentation. You will receive an explanation of all the acronyms. There will be a follow-up. We will establish a question and answer document where we will take your questions in more detail. Of course, those that are confidential and have been addressed to us specifically, we will deal with confidentially through the research help desk. There are questions on how to budget standardization in Horizon 2020 projects. You can budget standardization as any activity in your project. You can develop a standardization work package within your proposal. So standardization can be budgeted the same as one of our members can become a full partner of your project, can also become a subcontracted partner of your project. So these are all aspects to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and another aspect that I think you need to ensure is that the partners that are not specifically in the project to only deal with the standardization aspect, that they also ensure that there is resource in their work package for them to make sure so that there is also content-specific efforts that can be contributed from the side of the partners into any standardization work. So It is not the case that only our member will have to care about the standardization progress. Also the partners, the other partners in the consortium will have to ensure that they have manpower available in order to further the standardization activity that would result from their project.
I look at other questions. Is it enough to mention the role of the standards or the fact that you have considered standards? It very much depends on the call. Our previous experience with project is that the stronger the link with the standardization organizations, with the members, with the standardization experts, the fact that they are part of your project proposals, the better the chances are to pass evaluation once the project is submitted to the European Commission. There is also the question on reasonable budget. It's very difficult to assess that like this up front. There is no fixed sum for standardization. It very much depends if you're looking at developing a standardization plan. Are you looking at assessing gaps? Are you actually looking at developing a new standard or a new workshop agreement? All these take different time, take different expert contribution, which means a different budget. The same as it's difficult to say upfront, but this is a service we can provide ad hoc, and we can confidentially discuss with you on how you can define upfront, or we will meet twice with the standardization organization. It depends very much on what you want to develop. If it's something that already fits within a given technical committee, then there is one approach to take. If you're looking at developing a new standard, a new workshop agreement, then it's a process that starts from 0 to 100, and we have to look at it in a different way. And of course, that implies more resources, more budget. Bearing in mind the size of the project and the strong support for standardization, and if you want the strong push almost for standardization from the European Commission, addressing this from the beginning will increase your chances in the evaluation process, but will also ensure that you have the necessary budget. Rather than passing through evaluation or further down the line, which is also examples we've had, where the policy officers from the Commission redirect projects to the standardization community saying, you have not addressed standardization, you need now to start a standard. A lot more difficult to address all the resources, the funding necessary when your project is ongoing than upfront at the beginning. I am sorry if some of you did not hear all the explanations, because I see some did not have audio, but as I mentioned, the slides and the recorded version will be made available next Tuesday. So you will have an opportunity to re-listen to all the presentation again. The questions that are confidential, we will take offline confidentially. The others we will publish as well to present a coherent approach, a coherent Q&A. And to conclude a bit before time, so with 15 minutes left, our research help desk is in practice, Luc and myself. Only in discussion with you will we redirect the question to either a technical committee, in agreement with you, to either a technical committee or one of our members. We will always check with you first. We work confidentially with project proposers. We realize you are in a competitive environment. However, we have the necessary skill, the necessary expertise to guide you and then assess with you what the best solution is in terms of standards. There were also questions with regards specific ICT standardization. That is something that we need to take a deeper look into and then assess if that is a question or a project that fits within the CENELEC work program, within the CENELEC sectors, or needs to be redirected further to our sister organization, ETSI. You also have our individual email addresses. Luc and myself work complementary on the Horizon 2020 sectors. You saw the screening, we mentioned the screening of all the societal challenges and all the lead industrial leadership calls is available online. You will receive the link to that. We have screened all the calls and their relationship to standardization. So I would say a very simple rule of thumb is if you're thinking of proposing a project under any of the calls we have identified, it would be a very good idea to either contact us or your member at the national level to see how to address standardization in your proposal. The assessment services, just to make a distinction between the services we provide here at the CENELEC Management Center, are free. It's our job. To do this, the services of our members, however, they are paid. They're individual entities, they're companies, they're profit-making companies. So including them in the research proposal will mean also assessing budget and discussing budgeting and expert costs with them upfront, which can be absorbed by a research project. I think this covers, hopefully in a lot more detail, the standardization aspect in Horizon 2020. We found the exercise very interesting. We have still about 300 people online, which is a very good success rate. We hope you will also listen to the recording if there's anything you missed today. Don't hesitate to send us questions still after the webinar, and we remain at your disposal, and good luck with your project proposals under Horizon 2020. Thank you.